and welcome to Life an Inside Job with me, Kate Codrington. And this week it's Dr Becky Quicke, who's also known as the menopause psychologist. And there is swearing in this, though not straight away. But then there's always swearing in these podcasts. A friend did call me out on that the other day, so just expect swearing. And in this episode, Becky shares the psychological skills that she uses to help her menopause clients find their essential self and to voyage through that transformation into second spring with peace and confidence so they can be the change that the world really needs to see. And goodness knows we need to see that change right now.
I wondered actually whether I could start with a cycle check-in. Is that all right? As to where the context of where I am today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think it's really interesting because how I am today on this podcast obviously is very different from how I will be in 2 weeks' time. And I think that's really important, especially that's the work we do in terms of tracking our cycles and where we are. So I mean the actual day is almost I'm day 22, my cycle's about 25, so I'm very, very close to the end of this cycle. Very much in autumn. I was just having a bit of a chuckle to myself actually just before, realizing it's the first time I've realized it actually, that's come up into my awareness, that I have the same thought every cycle, which is, oh yeah, I think I'm going to start my period earlier this month. I think I'm ready. I think it's coming. It never does. It's just that the pre-menstrual, the inner autumn is longer, but it has been for quite a long time now. But so I'm in my inner autumn. So I just wanted
to. Can you, for people who might not know what inner autumn means, can you explain what that is, please?
Yeah, it's the pre-menstruum phase of the cycle. That's quite often talked about, isn't it? The premenstrual. And I guess it's going to mean different. Well, the archetypal energy is very much that I've learned through Red School, which I know you also trained and worked with. It's lots of different aspects to it, aren't there? It is a time of harvest, and I personally find that comes earlier on in the inner autumn. So with the when we bleed, with that being the inner winter, and then coming out of that pre-ovulation being the inner spring, ovulation in a summer, and then that phase before we bleed again being the inner autumn. I find that as I come out of summer into the inner autumn, it does feel like a bit of a reviewing, a bit of a harvesting phase, where I kind of review back on the cycle and I'm a bit more reflective.
So how do you know when you've left summer and autumn starts? What happens in you?
It is definitely a shift towards the inside of me, to inwards. Yeah, it is. And also, I mean, I notice physiologically my energy starts to change. Energy starts to, well, again, so my outward energy, my doing energy starts to drop. But my my inside energy, I seems to kind of come a little bit more alive. I want to turn inwards more. And it varies. It does vary through the inner autumn for me. Sometimes I do get very focused around this time. I'm not getting that this month, but I do quite often get very focused and like clearing the decks energy.
Okay.
But I also, like, this is where I am now, can be very drifty and kind of heading towards the kind of inner winter, and I just feel I've had a bit of I just had a nap before I feel like I have to really pace myself.
Mm.
But what's really interesting is that I used to struggle significantly at this time of the cycle, as in I would tick pretty much every box on the diagnosis of PMDD. Not that I ever looked into that diagnosis, but if you looked at it, and I mean every box, it was a very, very difficult phase for me for a long time. And what I've learned for myself through working with Red School and working intimately with my cycle is how I am in the rest of the cycle does have such an impact on my inner autumn. And the more I connect in with myself in the inner winter, and generally the more kind of grounded I am within myself, then that kind of stretches my buffer between the kind of the outside world in terms of everything, really, sensory stuff, boundaries of people's emotions and energies. I'm more able to buffer from that if I'm more connected within. And I think that's the key that's helped me in the premenstruum. So, because in the past I'd be very jangly right now, and I'd really struggle sensory wise, and a lot of women I work with experience that as well, really heightened senses, which obviously then leads to irritability, but actually it's that sensitivity to the point where holding my daughter's hand was painful. And I absolutely I'm very, very physical. I love holding her hand, I love cuddles, but at the premenstruum for a long time I had to just kind of go with it. But that's how sensitive I was physiologically.
So I just want to say this back to you to see if I've understood what you said. So in your winter, which is in your period, by connecting in with yourself, so that means what for you, like meditation or resting, or
lots of resting. And I do yoga. I'll do some yoga nidra. I don't do meditation per se, but I spend a lot of time with myself, and I think it's the deep rest. I mean, and I use music to, like, I do dip into probably a meditative state, really, in my inner winter quite a lot. But I use music to kind of do that, and I do connect with quite deep places, and sometimes it's very emotional, but then sometimes it's actually I get an experience where actually I want to be out, because sometimes I want to hide, really kind of be in my little cave. Sometimes I really, really need to connect with nature. I have to be in a forest of trees, and I feel like there's no boundary between me and them. I really just feel like I'm kind of, it's really, I love it. I do love it. So it varies.
By using all these different ways of coming into yourself, you create strong enough boundaries so that the PMDD type symptoms you have disappeared. I mean, that is a pretty radical statement.
Yeah. And I remember on the leadership program that I did, there were a number of us that said similar things, or were no longer identifying with PMDD. I didn't identify with it before, but I knew that I could do. I mean, I'm less, they're less intense. And interestingly, last cycle, my last menstrual cycle, so not this one I'm having here, but the one before, for a number of reasons, I had a very stressful, so the time before my premenstruum of my last cycle, I had a lot of stress, a lot more stress on top of normal everyday stress, put it that way. And oh my God, did I felt all that again in my premenstruum. It was so interesting. I realized that for months I have stress, life is has stresses and anxieties and worries and emotions and up and down, but actually there was just some kind of more significant stuff going on. And yeah, I felt it in my premenstruum. I had it again. I thought, oh gosh, I'm here again. The jangly, the nervous system and kind of really sort of struggling. So
what did you put in place in that autumn, in that premenstrual phase, to kind of hold you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the awareness of it was the fact that I noticed what was happening and how I was feeling. Trying to think what I put into actual place. I can't think what I did proactively, but and that's the psychological skills. That's one of the key skills that we know the research shows is so important, which is the awareness. And I know it's not rocket science, it's really obvious, but that noticing, bringing this stuff up into conscious awareness, that's liberation in itself, because we spend so much unconscious, we don't know what's happening, but unconscious energy keeping some stuff pushed down in our minds, and that's exhausting. And actually noticing that, having that rise to the surface, me notice it, that's a kind of a release in itself. I think when I was really struggling well in the past, I used to go into the kind of thought cycles of, I can't cope with this, I can't do this for another 10 years. Because I noticed that my menstrual cycle, all the different seasons, became more intense in my 40s, basically. But I'm still only 43, so I was thinking, I used to think I can't cope with this for 10 years. I mean, not that I know how long does this go up, but really catastrophizing. And that's where that's the kind of level that I work with women at. The whatever happens, whatever's going on, whatever we're feeling, we can look at that, but actually it's our response to what's going on that's the kind of key, really, or is the space where it becomes very emotionally difficult. So actually experiencing sensory sensitivities or noticing anxious thoughts or whatever it might be, they're not particularly pleasant, but actually it's not horrendous. It's I can't cope with this.
Yeah.
That's what causes
the way I think about it is the charge.
Yeah.
There's the thing that's happening, the somatic experience or the thought patterns, but then there's the charge and the meaning that we give them and the story that we tell ourselves about them that can be just so debilitating.
Yeah. And that perception of things, that charge, that narrative that we have is so important. And I know this is a huge part of your work, and likewise with myself. The general narrative of menstrual cycles, perimenopause, menopause, the societal narrative has such a huge impact, doesn't it, on us individually. If you're transitioning through perimenopause and you're seeing this as a transition, as a kind of a time of review, a huge stretched autumnal phase, a time of review, a time to sift out the shit, whatever, you're seeing this as a kind of a quest and a journey. And I often talk about it in terms of being in the storms on a boat, but actually navigating your way through. If you see it like that, and it's a process of the life cycle, it's part of maturation, it's part of human development, it's part of our maturation. That's very different. Doesn't mean it's easy, but that's very different from the catastrophizing that I kind of just been talking about in an acute way, but in a bigger way. That, oh my gosh, the fear around it, that and there's so many stories that are kind of sold, aren't there? And that's if that could shift, then then that's the charge, you know, in a way. We're still going through it.
The thing is, while we're panicking and go, oh my God, I can't cope with this, and how am I going to while we're in that place, we reach out and grab any kind of fix.
Yeah.
Like,
just hearing you speak like that was actually, it's like, it's exhausting.
It's hard work. Yeah. And we're tired already.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right about the kind of reaching out for a fix. Yes.
And I know that we've had this, we've referred to this topic a few times in the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to, I mean, you've already shared with us about building awareness of what's happening. What other psychological techniques do you bring into your work to offer your people to help with their perimenopause transition and to help with their symptoms as well?
Yeah. There are a couple of kind of key psychological skills, and just in terms of the background, I come from a place of I've been trained in lots of different psychological approaches, but the one that has resonated with me, the one that I finally kind of went, oh yes, this makes sense. It comes from a body of work that's called contextual behavioral science. So in the kind of history of psychology, we've had different waves. They call them waves of cognitive behavioral therapy. So what a lot of people think of as CBT is what we would call the traditional second wave. And now we're on to the third wave. And it comes from a different theoretical basis, which I'm not going to go into. But it's basically, this is how I describe it. I love it because it basically helps you to be a human in the context of yourself and in the world. It's not focused on symptom reduction. It's about living. It is about being a human. It's about living a life aligned to what matters to you. But to do that, there are psychological skills that the kind of research has shown, and processes that are required to help you to do that, because of course things get in the way, you know, all of our stuff kind of gets in the way. And so the kind of term that pulls all there are 6 processes that the research has shown to help us be a human in this world, and, you know, live the life that we kind of choose and want to live that's meaningful. And the kind of the term that brings them together is psychological flexibility. And what that basically means is and what I love about it is that it's unique to every situation and every person. It's completely unique. So it's about the process of how we respond to our bodies, to what comes up in our minds. It's not what's happening in your body. It's not the thoughts you have or the feelings you have or the emotion. In a way, that doesn't matter, whatever, because we all come with so much, everything's just unique and different. So we're not kind of interested in the content of stuff. It's our response to it. And so one of the skills that we use, that I use a lot with those that I'm working with, is called diffusion. So basically it's being able to experience whatever we're experiencing by diffusing from the intensity of something. So rather than getting rid of a symptom or getting rid of a difficult thought or emotion, instead of getting rid, which is what most people try and do, because as a human it kind of makes sense, we're problem solvers, and if there's something that doesn't feel very nice, we try and get rid of it. You know, that's the problem solving part of the brain that we've developed. However, that doesn't work for emotions, unfortunately. But we use that approach, that human that human approach of trying to problem solve and get rid of something that's not enjoyable. But also, I think that there's a lot of marketing that's used to kind of take advantage of that, really, and help, and for us to think that if we get rid of something, that will be better, but actually it perpetuates it. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well in terms of the marketing. We can maybe come back to that. But yeah, it's about being able to live with all of your stuff. So when I hear people talk about kind of talking back to the inner critic, we'll talk about inner critic, because this is talked about quite a lot in the kind of menstrual world, because we're aware that the inner critic tends to rise up in the autumn, and that can be both helpful or not helpful. And that's the psychological flexibility. Is this helpful to me right now? Do I want to listen to the inner critic, or actually do I not want to? But if it's holding us back, if the inner critic is not being helpful to us, it's about still being alongside that, really, still having that there, not sort of saying, not talking back to it, not having an argument with it. It's about accepting actually that's well, the metaphor that we often use is called passengers on the bus. I actually adapted it to passengers on the boat, because I talk about navigating the way through, but it basically means is that we are the drivers of I'll use the analogy, the boat. We are navigating our way through perimenopause in our boats. And we have lots of passengers. And the reason, by the way, that we use a lot of metaphor is I just find it so helpful. If I can actually visualize something, it kind of makes sense. So yeah, all these passengers are all the kind of the parts that we have, that have grown within us over the years. I mean, you could say they're different thoughts, beliefs, what have you, but they're passengers that are there. And there can be some really helpful passengers that are really kind of cheerleading you on and very kind. But there are obviously lots of tricky passengers who really berate you, in terms of you're navigating your way through, and they're telling you you're going the wrong way, you don't know what you're doing, they're kind of really having a go at you. And so acknowledging, so I do it all the time. I noticed this weekend a new passenger. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but I do still keep noticing new passengers. Very emotional, actually. Well, I hadn't realised there was this passenger. But yeah, noticing who's on our boat, who are we taking with us, and developing a relationship with that passenger, and showing it some care and compassion, even if it's being really horrible and nasty to us and telling us this, that, and the other, or even the passenger that says menopause is going to be awful, you're gonna go under. Okay, this is what I often say to people actually as well. Some of those passengers are, have been plonked on your boat kind of by society, that they're, some of those aren't necessarily our passengers, but they're there, and they have become part of our, on our boat. So it's about embracing that, actually, and accepting I have that passenger, but still being able to navigate your way through without stopping the boat, turning around, trying to throw the passenger off the boat, or having a massive argument with the passenger, or like passive aggressive, I'm ignoring that passenger. All these different psychological approaches or responses to our thoughts and feelings and what have you, they all get in the way of us navigating our way, living life as we want to live it. So, and what we would call that is diffusion. So it's creating space, basically, between yourself and your self energy and all of the emotions, thoughts, feelings, physical sensations. Obviously in perimenopause there will be the physiological sensations as well. Creating space between you and it.
So first we've developed an awareness of what's happening and named it. And now maybe we've become aware that there is a particular quality of criticism happening in my head.
Yeah.
So how do I create space? What do I do to develop that relationship to, well, and I'm to soothe the critic?
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah. There are lots of different techniques now, really. There are lots of different techniques, and sometimes it can be simply adding in a couple of words, and that can create the space. So I'm trying to think of an example. If there's a very critical passenger and it's saying, or maybe if we take that the kind of fearful, the fearful passenger that's saying, you're going to menopause is this is going to be awful, you're going to fall apart, or but what would actually happen is that we would think, the thought would come through, I'm going to fall apart. I'm just having a bit, the reason why I just sort of slightly laughed there was because as much as I do around this, and bloody hell, this is my day in, day out, I still have that passenger where it's a human thing. So yeah, if we have this, I'm gonna fall apart, we're fused with that. It's close, we're in it. There's no space between me and that passenger. I am that, but I am gonna fall apart. And if you add in just a couple of words, which is, I'm noticing, I'm having the thought. Oh no, actually the first step can be, I'm having the thought, I'm having the thought I'm going to fall apart. I'm having that thought. Or my passengers I think once you actually, if you do the passenger analogy, you're immediately diffused. I think if you see it as something separate, you're diffused. But even if you're not doing passengers on the bus or on the boat, if you say, I'm having the thought I'm going to fall apart, it's like, okay, I'm having the thought. You just sort of step back. And then you can even say, I'm noticing that I'm having the thought I'm going to fall apart. And even just saying that now here with you now, I'm like, I've got a bit of distance. Yeah. It's not gone away, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm noticing I'm having that thought. Okay. Now I can.
Because you instantly bring another person in. You bring in the observer, don't you?
Yes, exactly. And it's like, I see it visually, you then turn towards it, it comes away. It's almost like a physical change, a structural change. And you can then you can decide, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it is that I'm doing, and I'm just going to take you with me. I do that all the time. So this new passenger that I noticed the weekend, it's noticing and accepting, actually she's going to dance within me. I've not realized that she's there, and so, but I'm going to let her. She wanted to dance, actually, even though she's quite a tricky passenger. But yeah, so she's just there. And I sometimes might say, these are just all random things I'm throwing out here, but it depends what I'm doing. But if I'm out and about and I've got a particular, it might even just be, oh my God, I'm going to be late and they're going to do, what they're going to think or what have you. And I'll go, oh, I'm just noticing I'm having that thought, and I'll go, okay, sling you in the backpack. That's just something I do. I'll sling you in the backpack. You're coming with me. And then on I go. And whereas if I try and if I try and go, oh, don't think about that, that's just creates tension.
Yeah. And then often there comes the next layer of judgment, which is, I shouldn't be having this.
Yes.
And then you start to make a really toxic sandwich of,
no, that's the key. That actually then that's quite often where people are at. They're already at that point, and that's the issue. That's the kind of the shame, and that's the deeper, more painful kind of emotions.
Talk about shame.
Pardon?
Can we talk about shame?
Yeah. I mean, and this kind of links to it, but I just wanted to say the other reason, the other part of the analogy that I use with the boat is that a lot of people are out in the waves. They're not on their boat. They're actually splashing around in the waves, trying to keep their heads above water and really struggling. And so I see that the first part of the work I do with people is bringing them onto their boat. And that's obviously the metaphor, but that is connecting with our true essence. That's connecting with our true energy, which is hard to describe, isn't it?
How do you do that, Becky?
How?
Yes.
Well,
a sentence, please.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? Do you know what? And this is why I absolutely love working with those going through perimenopause and menopause. My general experience so far, compared to having done all these, use these approaches with lots of different people. Oh my God. So there is, I'll tell you what I do actually. There's a particular exercise we do. And when I go through, when people do this exercise, they really actually quickly connect with their true essence. It's like, vroom. So what I think is happening is the layers have been peeling back. And by the time people come to me, I feel like they're on the edge of themselves. They're near, like I visualize it as this stream of energy inside ourselves. I sort of see going up out top of our heads and all the way down. And I feel like people are just not quite in that beautiful stream of their true essence and energy. They're just on the outside. And they're just kind of wobbling out there. But I help to guide them in, connect with their true energy. And I just can't tell you. It's not like any other client group I've ever had. They just, it's like, boom. Because this is the thing, isn't it? We are, well, I would say that we're primed to be doing this, to be turning in towards ourselves. And, you know,
I would say that perimenopause is a process of coming towards yourself. It's a process of moving closer to that essence. So people, you know, that's the natural movement.
Yeah.
At this time of life.
Yeah. I experienced that as well, and it's just incredible, because the reason why I do that work first, so I basically help them to connect with their true selves, and I do that, and we focus on self-compassion, and I can talk about that in terms of the shame and things like that. In psychology, with all my colleagues who work with this approach, actually there's no set way, there's no set routine or any kind of structure around those processes. You just go with whatever the person's coming with. But I'm really clear in this client group with people that come to work with me that we focus on that first, that self-compassion. In ACT, it's called self as context. In every psychological approach, it's the same thing. They call it different words, you know, soul, whatever it is, self with a big S. So that has to come first, because what I've noticed is when that happens, and then I do the psychological skills, we do grounding, dropping your anchor, we do the diffusion I've just been talking about. It just flows, like they get it really, really quickly. Of course they do, because they're connected with their true selves. And so that is the key. And so bringing it back to the shame, that in a way, I've not sort of thought this before, but that quite possibly might be the barrier at which, when people come to work with me, I think that's the barrier between where they are, because quite often people have done a lot of stuff before they come to me, you know, but that's the barrier, that shame and that fear. And I think deep down, there is a knowing, because I think they've been journeying towards themselves as a knowing to connect deeper, but a fear and a shame of who that, you know, a shame is obviously is about who you are as a person, not kind of what you do, it's who you are, and a worry that actually who you are is not good. And so, I mean, the exercise that I guide women, people through is one where they basically, in essence, also I'm not going to go through it, they connect with their future selves. And so it's a visualization. This is a kind of quite a key exercise. So yeah, connecting with their future selves seems to allow them to connect in with their true energy, because it's kind of, they're visualizing their future selves. Of course, they're actually visualizing with their deep true self. And so we kind of, that's how we expand it, and it can be very, very emotional actually, yeah, beautiful to witness that. Actually, I've never worked with someone who, because obviously we all have these beautiful true essences, there's no, you know, that's how it is. And so everyone that's done that, you know, has been able to connect with that really pure, innocent, beautiful self. I mean, if we could all, you know, have some connection with that, with the narrative being shifted, if we just have those two parts, what a world that would be.
Yeah, well, it's taking steps in that direction, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just want to acknowledge this possibility that actually, for somebody really struggling with cultural shame about aging, about fears about falling apart, about being unlovable, undesirable, and in physical pain and psychological pain,
yeah,
that actually their essential self, which you so movingly described, the innocence and that joyful, vibrant self, is actually already there and not that far away.
Yeah. Oh, I've just gone all shivery. Yeah. And yeah, I think there are different ways, aren't there, to guide ourselves towards that. Yeah, because you know, people do come with their own condition of how they are in their lives and in their bodies, and with past trauma and all sorts of different threads to their being. I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we do need to be held and to connect with that. Yeah. Sometimes that, you know, sometimes we can do that on our own, or not on our, you know, in our own lives with the people around us, and sometimes we do need holding around that.
It needs affirmation as well. We need it. We really need an affirmation that that's okay. And there is a great deal in our working, in our family lives, and in our culture that says no. It says no, because we need you to step up. We need you to keep your nose to the grindstone. I need my needs met all the time. So no, of course you can't. You know.
Yeah.
So we really need this kind of team. We need to access the good people in your personal boat, but also in your community.
Yeah, one of, I mean, God, well, I really do love my work. It's genuinely a joy. And one of the people who, I think it's in the course, they said, oh, we're on an armada, you know, because I talk about the boat. I was like, yes. So yeah, you're right. Do you know what I kind of got to say new thoughts. Something came through to me this morning, and normally I would kind of hold that and just kind of let that cook. But actually, I'm going to share it with you. It's nothing revolutionary, but I just kind of, I guess, whether it's me accepting this as the case or I don't know, but I thought this morning, actually, no, something happened yesterday that made me have this. And then I really sort of thought about it this morning, that live cyclically, but also, well, no, the essence of my thought was to live flexibly, whatever that means, to be flexible and respond to ourselves in a flexible way and live our lives in a flexible way, which is what, I mean, there's over 500 randomized controls. I mean, research, I have a bit of a, part of me thinks, research, part of me thinks, well, actually, it's quite nice to know, this is, we need to be flexible to be a human in this world. So we know we need it, but being flexible in a rigid world, can I swear?
One friend said, I get at the beginning, I say, there is some swearing in this episode, and you may, if that offends you, you may like to find a different episode. And a friend of mine pointed out there aren't any.
Yeah.
They're all bloody swearing.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think the answer is yes.
So living flexibly in a rigid world is fucking exhausting. It's exhausting. And actually, I think that's the case. I actually think so that when you say, in terms of actually we're needing this armada, we really bloody do, because I mean that sounds a bit I can't think of the word now. Sounds counterintuitive, because psychological flexibility does free you up. It sort of it unhooks you from all of those passengers I was talking about. However, when I'm thinking about being like that in a system that is not like that, you're always going against the grain. And whether it's this however many generations, or I think I'm starting to realize that actually this is a choice, and it's a choice that I will live to actually live towards the values that I choose. But it isn't easy. It really isn't. Actually, to be rigid in a rigid system is probably a lot easier in lots of ways. Would be not as fulfilling, and would be pretty dull, and and very sort of trappy, I would say. But actually, it's just, I had that thought
you would
yesterday.
Miss out on, because I can speak personally about this, because I have to armor up. I have to not feel my feelings. I have to not be vulnerable. That has to go.
Yeah.
Pack its bags, which means that I can't be intimate with people.
Yeah.
My creativity goes down the pan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I burn out.
Yeah. Exactly. But I guess what I'm saying is that the alternative is no easy ride either.
Yeah.
But of course, it's a more fulfilling one ultimately. It was just because I also work part-time in the court system, and it was me realizing, I mean, it's very values-led work and very fulfilling, but it's really freaking hard work, and actually that's an extreme example, but that's what made me think about it yesterday, because it's the courts, it's the law, it's rigid, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and to be grounded in psychology, which is not black and white, to be balanced, to be reflective, to be all the things that I think are right to help the courts. That's what they're looking to me to do, but to be like that is really tricky in a rigid system. In that system, it'd be so much easier to be yes or no, but so that's what made me then think about life in general. Wow, actually being like this, being a cyclical person, living cyclically with your menstrual cycle, in a linear world, it's we do need that, the communities around us, don't
Absolutely.
we?
And you're creating this new community, which is opening very soon. I'm very excited to hear more about that. Can you say?
Yeah, it's lovely. Well, I started it 3 months ago, because we've just had the 3rd month. So I started it 3 months ago. It's really tender and in its teeny little infancy state. It is. It was just an idea, and I put a call out for 50 founder members, and who came on board immediately. So I've had 3 months at the moment. They receive a recorded workshop from me on an issue. So we've done anger and rage, brain fog, and menstrual cycles, and it's an in-depth workshop from me with resources to then, you know, kind of embed that into our lives. And then each month we have an online event relevant to that workshop. So at the moment, that's the bare bones, the bare basics. And the reason why I did it comes back to actually the issue that we touched on at the beginning about this quick fix thing. I was on Instagram quite a lot doing videos and sharing my stuff. And then I just suddenly had a kind of, oh, am I feeding into this model of quick fix? And actually, you know, when we, and I do it myself, you might listen to something, a snapshot, you might just listen to something for 5 minutes, and it's almost sort of topped you up, makes you think that you've kind of done a bit of work on that, and then you just carry on without actually really reflecting about what you're listening to or taking in, and thinking about how that's then integrating that into ourselves. And so I decided to stop doing the Instagram videos, put my energy into these workshops, and it's once a month purposefully, because I think then you've got a month to integrate it with an event, you know. So yeah, that's the bare bones. I do have ideas going forward, which are quite exciting, but we're opening up the doors just for a week for new members. They'll have a week to join.
And is that
the end of June. So yeah, the end of June.
No, come on, be specific.
So the
end of June when?
I know it's
people are going to miss it.
So yeah, the 23rd.
23rd.
Yeah,
you open up.
I'm actually going to do a workshop that evening for an hour on anger and rage. Anger and rage has just resonated so much. It's just like wow. So I thought I'm going to do a workshop. Those details I'm sort of sending out at the moment on that evening, and then for a week until the 30th, people can join up. It's £10 a month for the workshop and the event.
Wow.
And that just gets sent out monthly. And yeah, but in the future, yeah, I'm looking into things. I really want to create the kind of community vibe of support, but not on Facebook. So I'm looking into options at the moment. There are some actually out there.
Because that's the thing. So you have some kind of stimulation or inquiry or process, or along with some information. But then, because we're human and life is busy and intense, we need a little nudge from our Armada friends.
Yes.
Say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to impossible to do it by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's the extra support that I'm looking into creating, but not on Facebook, basically. Lots of people don't like it, and actually I prefer not to. It's
problematic, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, an event, I'm thinking about, you know, oh gosh, I just want to see people face to face. I really do. We'll see. Well, we will eventually, obviously. So yeah, that's exciting.
Oh, and that, yeah, I think that's such a wonderful opportunity for people to really create a balance of of nurturing to really sort of fuel that sense of self, fuel that core so that she gets really strong.
Yeah, yeah. One of the founder members told me not that long ago that it feels like she's learned, the words she used were, I'm learning whilst being nurtured, whilst feeling nurtured. So learning whilst feeling nurtured. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what, that's the intention. So, you know, I am teaching psychological skills, I'm teaching stuff, but wanting people to feel nurtured. So I've actually put that in as a tagline now to the Menopause Collective. I'm like, wow, that's not me, that's what you know she said. So yeah, learning whilst feeling nurtured.
I would say unless you're feeling nurtured, you can't learn anything.
Exactly.
You might be able to learn some facts, but you certainly can't integrate them.
Well, there then is the quick fix issue. Yeah,
you have to manage your nervous system.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
You know, that sounds like something on your to-do list. The nervous system has to be managed in order for us to move forward, I think.
Yeah. I mean, really, what all the work that I do ultimately is helping to create that sense of safety and soothing, you know, deep down, which then allows us to relate more deeply, because we are social mammals, and we, you know, that's what we're primed to do, to co-regulate and to relate and be connected. And that really, even though I don't sort of well, sometimes I talk about that explicitly, sometimes I don't, but that's really, even though I'm not working around relationships, really that's what I'm doing. Well, actually, no, I'll tell you what, even underneath that, the reason why I initially wanted to start working directly with women and women at this phase is because I've worked with children and adolescents the whole of my career until 3 or 4 years ago. But yes, I did. But actually, you know, and being a parent myself, I knew that really, if I want to make an impact on the next generation, I need to do something with this group. And even though people come with struggles, and people are struggling through this phase, I know that this group of the change makers, this is where it's at. This is the ripple effect of having an impact on someone in their 40s and 50s. For me, this is just my little piece of the world. Those ripples, I think, are very significant, both always, all directions, for that individual, couple, family, you know, community. And so it's to have that ripple effect, that's very motivating, fulfilling, I guess, for me, and then wider in terms of the bloody world, you know.
Absolutely.
We're going to make a massive statement that you know, we're going to save the world, this group, but in a way, you know, I definitely think there's a big role for us.
Yeah. Well, look
in
at
our own little.
Look at those on the, I don't know, any kind of activism. Look at the majority of them are going to be twinkly-eyed women in second spring.
Yeah.
I mean, in my little community here, my village here, they're just like phenomenal. The latest thing is for having a refillable, you know, plastic-free shop, and it's because of that second spring energy. She's off the scale, that woman, but she's not alone. There's gazillions of them. Yeah.
There, in a way, would you say, because I've just written, it's funny, I've literally just written a blog this morning. It was around brain fog, but basically saying, before I will write a blog about certain things that you can kind of support yourself with it, but before I do that blog, I was saying, actually, it's completely normal, like this process of reviewing and all this kind of stuff. Of course your brain's going to be on go slow. And then I'm trying to think what that was how I wove that in, but basically that this needs to happen so that then along the lines of that we will bloom, you know, in second spring and in our mature years. That's when we're in full bloom.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I mean, this is, you know, you're closer to that than me. Do you see that happening, the full bloom, or is that?
Well, I think because of this seasonal model, I think second spring is a very tender time.
Yeah.
I think it's quite vulnerable. I think that what I see in my peers who are also in this place in life is that we quite often feel that we should have got stuff, we should be doing it now.
I'm thinking about I'm thinking maybe slightly
because there is second summer.
Yeah, that's where I imagine.
And that is a different thing. It takes a while to land.
Yeah.
It's my experience from menopause.
Yeah, I can imagine.
From you know, from the journey on the sea journey.
Yeah.
Sea legs.
Whoa. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Becky, you've been so generous in your wisdom and advice and your tips, and I'm going to be greedy and ask you for a final something.
Oh gosh.
To improve our inner life, something easy that we can integrate into our everyday life. I know, I'm just mean. Everybody hates it when I
I'm remembering listening to this. I remember listening to this now, and so I should have been preparing for this. I would say that my one thing is what can be described as fierce compassion. So that means that compassion for yourself, yes, can be this beautiful, tender, nurturing, soothing way of relating to yourself. That's really, really important. But actually, fierce compassion can also be strong boundaries and really clear kind of boundaries around your time, around anything really, and around expressing yourself. That's fierce compassion.
Yeah.
So it's about compassion and all elements of that with yourself. It's being again, I guess it's about that being in the center of who you are, and whatever that needs and whatever that takes, both the soothing and the protection, the action of soothing yourself and the protection of yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic. I shall go off and be fierce with my family. Poor bastards. They don't know what's going to hit them. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your compassion with us.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Becky's fabulous menopause community, the Menno Stars Collective, opens on the 23rd until the 30th of June, and her workshop on anger and rage is on the 23rd. And you can find all this information on her website, which is beckyquicke.com. That's BECKY and then quick with an E on the end.com. beckyquicke.com. And she also has a brilliant freebie which will show you how to manage your anxiety in perimenopause, which I can highly recommend. I'd love to hear your responses to our conversation. So do pop over to Instagram. You can find me at Kate_Codrington, where you can join the conversation or drop me a message. And if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be fabulous if you could share it with a friend who would find it useful, or even leave a review, and that would be just wonderful. Can you hear the sparrows? It's sparrow season out there. They've got so many teenagers, so many babies. It's bedlam. It's just such a joy to watch. Anyway, don't forget to join me very soon for another exciting voyage into the inside world.